First, though, tonight, a Channel 4 documentary brings you face-to-face with a man convicted of 2 murders, a suspect in many more, and whose alleged crimes earned him the nickname the Serpent. Here's his story.
Born in Saigon in 1944, Charles Sabraj has been convicted of 2 murders, is the prime suspect in 8 others and linked to as many as 30 more. He targeted tourists during the mid-1970s and 80s along the backpacking trails of Southeast Asia. His good looks and charm allowed him to befriend tourists he met. It's then thought he killed them, stole their identities and moved from country to country undetected. His use of disguises and his ability to slip past authorities earned him an infamous alias, the Serpent. Authorities in Thailand even captured and questioned Sabraj in early 1976, but a lack of evidence led to his release. He spent 2 decades in jail in India for poisoning a busload of French tourists in 1976. Only in 2004 was there enough evidence to find him guilty of murder. Sabraj spent 19 years behind bars for killing 2 tourists in Kathmandu. But in 2021, Sabraj was released on health grounds and now walks free. He denies ever killing anyone. His story has fascinated and frightened people around the world. In 2021, The Serpent became a hit BBC and Netflix series. Tonight, The Serpent speaks for himself.
Tonight's documentary team flew Charles Sabraj over to Britain after he agreed to an unprecedented opportunity to interview him at length.
Those asking the questions included consultant psychologist Paul Britton and former Detective Chief Inspector of the Met Police, the inspiration for Helen Mirren's character in Prime Suspect, Jackie Moulton. They both join us now this morning. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Good morning.
Having watched the drama, when we heard about the documentary, was absolutely gripped by the idea of this. Jackie, there's a moment where the phone call comes into you and the producers say, look, we've got the opportunity to interview Charles Sabraj, and you can sense that anticipation for you to be able to sit down across from this person who had sort of served so much time behind bars and was linked to so many other crimes. What was it like meeting him for the first time?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time with Charles Sabraj before the interviews. I went out for a few meals with him and had chats with him, and he was very, very pleasant. In fact, he's a gentleman. Highly intelligent, speaks a number of languages, charismatic, has a sense of presence. And, yeah, but then, of course, when you get to the interview, then it's a different game in as much as that we've got to get the evidence because he's there to tell the world he's not guilty. And our job, the team that we had was a great team, was to tell the world we think he is.
Mm-hmm. It was to watch it and watch you talk to him, it was so frustrating for me to even watch. The way he kind of tried to redirect the questions, wouldn't let you kind of finish a question. It must have been so frustrating for you.
Very, very frustrating, because what his MO, if you like, modus operandi, is just to deflect, completely deflect from the question. He says at the beginning of the interview, I will answer any questions, and he doesn't want to answer any questions at all. He only wants to tell me what he wants to tell me. Mm-hmm. So he goes off a tangent here and off a tangent there, and to bring him back to focus on the questions about these 5 victims, because that's what it's about. 5 victims, and we know more, but the programme concentrates on 5 victims who were murdered in Thailand. Not only were they murdered, he burnt 3 of them in order to disguise them. Now, Charles Sabraj will say to me, yes, I drugged them.
Stole passports.
Took their passports, I took their money.
Yeah.
And then I didn't hurt them, he said. I didn't hurt them. And people who did survive were in hospital for days because of the intensity of the poisoning. So, but according to him, he didn't commit those murders.
Yeah, there's a fascinating difference, Paul, between watching Jackie's interviews with him in this first episode and your interviews with him. The approach, I was intrigued by the approach as well, whereas Jackie's ended up being quite combative quite quickly. Your interviews were very different. There was a lot of gratitude. It's almost like you were going out of your way to make him appreciate you saying thank you all the time and answering his questions. It was a really interesting juxtaposition of technique.
When I work in a situation like this, I have 2 prime questions. I want to know, who are you and I want to know how did you get to be who you are. Now, from those two general questions, there's a reasonably good chance of unpacking who and what he is. And that's what I was there to do. Remember, I'm not there as a prosecutor. I'm there to understand, to investigate, to explore. And at the end of that, with a team behind me, to come to a conclusion about who and what he is, so that folks can make a decision, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
In other way, he's just another person who you interview as you do every day of the week. So, yes, I know there's a legend, I know there's a fable, but he's just today's interview.
Can I ask you a question? So in the first episode, you do a thing where you get him on side and you say, thank you very much, and you're very kind, and you very much get him on side. And then you turn around and you say to Charles, OK, I'm going to put a chair here in the room and we're going to pretend that it's your mum there. And I want you to speak to the chair as though it's your mother. What would you say to... And he couldn't do it. Why were you trying to get him to do that?
This is a man who had given varying accounts about his attitude, his relationships with his parents. And one of the things that he did, and Jackie's already alluded to it, at the easiest opportunity, he would attempt to stop you. He would attempt to close you down. He would deflect. Now, that's run-of-the-mill. And what you have to learn to do is to help him past that. You have to build that relationship that allows him to forget where we are, that there's just him and me, and you're in a bubble, a place where there's just the two of us, and that takes time. Now, it's so often the case that you can help someone to talk about their relationship with their parents, in this case, by using the empty chair. And that is, the empty chair is there, and what you ask is, imagine your mother is in the chair, and I want two things from you, please, if you're able. One is to tell me, to tell her, what would you say to her? So you have said she was horrible. You have said everything was her problem at some stage. Now, in the empty chair, I would like you, if you can, because it may help you, to ask her why. To ask her what comes next. And what happened is that he sort of went to pieces a little bit there.
Very much.
I mean, they clearly had a very dysfunctional relationship when he was growing up. We've got a clip, actually, Jackie, of you interviewing him at one point, and you get a sense of how hard you were pushing him to try and get him to answer your questions.
Why do you implicate yourself in this book and how you met these people, all of these people, Teresa?
Okay.
But why would you implicate? Let me please ask the question.
Yeah.
Why would you tell somebody for $20,000 and sell your soul? Why would you sell your soul for $20,000? Why?
That's why I cut my relation after with Richard Neville when the book appeared. Because I didn't agree to what he wrote, madam. I've told you already.
That controlling of the narrative, Jackie, constantly when you put something to him that's down there in black and white and he wants to twist it and he wants to hold on to his part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. That was all the way through, because you don't want to spoil the programme at all. But we do find, later on, we do find evidence that was found in his apartment, which relates to all of the victims. So the common denominator is Charles Sabrage.
But also what you're seeing is a technique that went on to be used quite corrosively, particularly with women. Because remember, he has high social skills, he's a bright man, and what he's able to do is to use this coercive controlling approach to bring people into his orbit. And once he's got them there, he gradually undermines their way of being and substitutes his own.
There is also, Jackie, there'll be people that are sitting at home thinking there are families of these victims who haven't had any justice because he served time for 2 murders, but he's linked to maybe even 20 more, who'll be sitting there. Why is Charles Sabrage being given this attention, this focus? He wanders around, loves being the centre of attention. I mean, what is it that we are getting from a programme like this about somebody like him?
You're absolutely right. Charles Sabrage puts himself up to be interviewed as the serial killer, but denies that he's the serial killer, but nevertheless wants the attention. So this is the only programme monster films that challenge Charles Barrage for his actions. And the reason that I went on that programme to do it is primarily for the victims, because hopefully through the interviews I give the victims a voice, and that's why we make these programmes. It's not about Charles Barrage, it is, but it's also primarily about victims.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. The show is going to be on Channel 4 tonight.
Yeah,
and
9
there's
o'clock.
3 parts, and I know, Paul, that your direction changes a little bit as the show goes on. And
180 degrees.
180 degrees.
I know what I'm doing for the next 3 nights, 9 o'clock.
The Real Serpent, investigating a serial killer on Channel 4 at 9 o'clock. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you very much.